Chapter 24. Sunday morning, creeping like a nun. Page 218. Note William used his right hand to practice Paul's signature before signing those documents. Later, he practiced Paul's signature with his left hand to give autographs. However, even left-handed, he never got the slant right. Soon, he let Paul's autograph drift to a left-handed version of his own handwriting. Eventually, it evolved to his current autograph featuring his obelisk. An obelisk is an erect phallic symbol representing the Egyptian sun god, Ra. Ra is hidden in William as Paul McCartney. The best-known obelisk in the US is the Washington Monument, named after the Freemason who became the father of the country the Freemasons set up and have controlled ever since. Each side of the 6,666 inches tall structure is 666 inches wide at ground level. Page 219. Note, William is probably correct that loved ones remained silent out of respect for Paul. Additionally, insiders understood that blowing the whistle would make them outsiders or worse. In light of who was required to pull off such a switch, interfering could be dangerous. Progress by degrees requires, among other things, keeping the secrets of each degree. Initiates swear on penalty of death to never reveal the secrets, to use their means to support the organization, and to never speak against them. An integrous person would, without malice and without breaking oaths, share only what can be shared. Page 221. Note, although Sgt. Pepper's was William's baby, bandmates John and George each provided excellent material. Their talents, along with that of Ringo and many session musicians, contributed immeasurably to the whole. William's work in writing, singing, playing various instruments and directing much of the project, however exceptional, relied heavily on the genius of producer George Martin and engineer Geoff Emerick. Like William, Geoff was a prodigious talent from a highly connected family. EMI hired him at 15 years old to help create the Beatles sound. He would also work with other artists whenever no Beatles work was in progress. His EMI employment began the day before the Beatles recorded their first hits. From the band's start, Geoff's training began as Norman Smith's assistant engineer and then became the Beatles' chief engineer, starting with the Revolver album, already pioneering innovative recording techniques before helping George Martin and William take the band to the Sgt. Pepper's level. With the creation of Apple Corps in 1969, William persuaded Geoff to leave EMI to direct the building of Apple Studio and then to continue as their engineer. When William dissolved the Beatles the following year, Geoff continued to work as William's engineer. Handlers had groomed Geoff to be Paul's guy from the start. Geoff's exceptional work was recognized with a Technical Grammy Award 2003 and 3 Grammy Awards for Best Engineered Recording, Non-Classical, for the Beatles albums, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and Abbey Road, and for the Paul McCartney and Wings album, Band on the Run, which was the first rock and roll album released in a communist country. Geoff has also received other Grammy nominations. Page 222. Note, when the Beatles replaced Pete Best with the less dominate, sick drummer, part of Ringo's appeal was his stage name, inspired by his rings and by Johnny Ringo. The name Ringo Starr conjures images of a ringed star such as a pentagram or Saturn, Lord of the Rings. Page 225. Chapter 25. Monday's child has learned to tie his boot lace. Page 228. Note, for energetic purposes, 144 names of people and countless other keywords, phrases, and punctuation now occur in this book in multiples of 3, reducing to 3, 6, or 9. For example, since Matt or Matthew had occurred only 8 times, the above Matthew reference was added to bring it up to 9 occurrences for that name, which, with this note, is now up to 12, reducing to 3. However, adding that reference required parentheses, which threw off the parentheses count, which was remedied by replacing parentheses everywhere with commas. That threw off the comma count, which required changing the period count. Page 231. Note, Paul was brilliant with his Hofner violin bass. His charismatic connection with that instrument was part of their great stage performance. William, however, had been more of a session musician than a stage performer. It is a different skill set. He found it awkward to play left-handed. He still needs to frequently look at his fingers when playing left-handed bass. while we were working on the Get Back, Let It Be sessions in 1969. The band took a break and then returned to discover that the historic bass and other instruments had been stolen. This image contrasts Paul and William holding the same iconic bass. It underscores the conspicuous differences in their physical stature. Paul, like John and George, was 5'11", 134 centimeters tall. William was 6'2 1/2", 89.23 centimeters tall. Similarly, when Michael Jackson was 5'9", 175.26 centimeters tall, his replacement stood at 5'11", 134 centimeters. Page 233. Note, the saying, "walk a mile in my shoes," is based on Marty T. Lathrop's 1895 poem, "Walk a Mile in His Moccasins," originally titled "Judge Softly." The poem is a call for empathy rather than judgment. As her poem suggests, if we could experience another's life even for a mile, we would perceive the person more charitably. Page 236, Chapter 26, Tuesday, 20th September 1966, page 239. Note, CERN, derived from Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, European Organization for Nuclear Research, operates the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. Located in Switzerland, it is about 6.6 miles from the World Economic Forum, 7.7 minutes by road. Believing that their Large Hadron Collider is a portal to transport countless hostile alien entities to Earth in a war against humanity, some people are unnerved by its statue of Shiva, the dancing god of destruction. However, CERN is not even affiliated with Hinduism. The impressive statue was simply a generous gift from the Department of Atomic Energy of India. Besides, if such science fiction were ever to become reality, and political leaders were suddenly possessed by entities attempting to make Earth uninhabitable to humans, it seems like we would all notice the shift and stop it. After all, they are merely experimenting. While some people object to the CERN logo being made of sixes, we could think of them as nines if it makes us feel better. Page 240. Note, Shiva, Parvati, Ganesha, Karnaka, and other deities in Hinduism are often shown to be divine by depicting them with multiple arms that might become visible when battling cosmic forces. In his When We Was Fab music video, George, who was immersed in Hindu symbolism, is depicted as such a deity. Figuratively, not just George, but all of the Fab Four were in various ways presented as divine, grooming the public to venerate all four as the gods of rock and roll. Chapter 27, Impersonators, page 245, note, awareness occurs in levels. Successful societal programmers provide material on a cognitive level to construct a framework for what is received subconsciously or unconsciously. The deeper the program is embedded, the less it is filtered by those receiving it. Unconscious beliefs and behaviors prevail over what can be thought out and dismissed. The way to change an unconscious belief is to bring the light of consciousness to it. Just as each rereading of this material brings more cognizance to these subjects, so too can we deprogram ourselves on any subject by bringing light to it, increasing consciousness layer by layer, such as through meditation. To reach the deepest levels of Paulism hidden in the dark, embedded deep in each subconscious psyche, it helps to know that it exists and how it got there. The above example of burying a message under other sounds is a common method. Repetition also works well for programming or deprogramming. Repeated positive affirmations can neutralize or reverse the effects of repeated negative affirmations. William effectively spread Paulism without being detected. Whether by accident or by design, the public frequently sensed William on a subconscious level while being completely oblivious to him consciously. For example, he often sang backup or played an instrument anonymously for other artists. He gave those songs the McCartney sound, energetically pointing fans to him. When listeners subconsciously hear him, he has elevated that much more. Usually he is unidentifiable. For example, he cannot be recognized when crunching celery in the Beach Boys song, Vegetables. Page 249. Note, perception creates reality because the media directed humanity to perceive the Beatles as the ultimate band. That belief made it so. The term Beatlemania first appeared in print in a 1963 review by the Daily Mirror, a newspaper owned by Lord Rothermere, a media baron with Rothschild connections. Although the mania was entirely manufactured, the belief in Beatlemania helped bring it into existence. The world manifested what it felt. While it is fascinating to understand how the media created Beatlemania by presenting it as already accomplished, the greater message is that we can each employ the technique to create our own reality. The more we focus on what we want to create, with gratitude as if it already existed, the more readily we or the universe bring it into existence. Believing it, and especially feeling it, contributes to making it real as a matter of cosmic consistency. Our reality becomes consistent with our beliefs. To whatever extent we feel and believe that this method does or does not work, we may be right.
Chapter 28, Recording with the Beatles, page 256.
Note: in tarot, the fool is a joyfully oblivious youth starting life's journey. In playing cards, a joker depicting a court jester is a wild card. In the few games that use that card, the joker usually replaces or trumps any natural card. Although now readily associated with the British, the custom of including jesters or fools in royal courts dates back to ancient Egypt. The court jester entertained the monarch and visiting dignitaries, more than amusing guests with music, storytelling and physical comedy. Many were best known for their sharp wit. Sharing meals with the royal family, they were privy to insight information, which could be used in subtle innuendo to humiliate an annoying guest. Jesters were among the very few to get away with making fun of a monarch. If witty enough, he could say almost anything. The Royal Order of Jesters, controlled by their subgroup, the Secret Order of Brothers in Blood, SOBIB, controls and is a subgroup of the Shriners, a Masonic society best known for their hospitals. Admission to the jesters by invitation only is limited to those at the top of the craft. William, the fool on the hill, is like an innocent youth oblivious to the dangers of replacing or trumpeting or trumping the natural card. He is a jester with inside information that he exchanges with other jesters of secret orders. If he writes masterfully, using wit to conceal his messages in plain sight, he can say almost anything. He is talking perfectly loudly, but nobody seems to hear him. Page 261. Note: William says, "Look to this fiction for fact, and to my fact for fiction." What he says about his disclosure is also true of how the cabal works generally. The greatest manipulations have always occurred by presenting fiction as non-fiction and by presenting fact as fantasy. That perceived distinction always fools most people. Absurd stories are seen as real merely because they are in newspapers, on television or on websites that pretend to be truthful even when those outlets are controlled by those with incentives to promulgate the most dangerous lies. The most trusted fact-checking websites or television programs go to some expense to maintain their reputations and are often useful to check on inconsequential urban legends or threats of computer viruses. However, providing many true statements for each ruse, along with disproving false rumors, they also claim to debunk a trigger word to make people believe them. Proof of scams perpetrated by specific treacherous corporations. The reverse is also true. Fictional formats, songs, movies or novels can condition people to think in specific ways about planned events. Sometimes directors or writers are tipped off to include specific details to add those ideas to the collective consciousness. This foreshadowing technique is useful for instilling subconscious dread or acceptance. Using fiction to plant ideas in advance allows writers and directors to program how viewers and readers respond to each issue as the programming is activated by real-life events. Page 264. Note: since 2009, the memoirs made many verifiable facts available that were not known before by Paul is Dead. Investigators, the above is an example. To verify the story, slow this song down a semitone from the key of D flat major back down to C major. If you do so, you will recognize William's natural voice that the world now knows much better. When William started this new role, he was concerned that his natural voice was too distinct from Paul's to go unnoticed. That concern diminished when Sgt. Pepper's trained fans to identify his voice with Paul's. Page 265. Note: although the Beatles are best defined by their albums, they also produced 63 singles. When most artists put great effort into their A-side song but put a throwaway song on the B-side, the Beatles intended hits on both sides of their singles. Although John and Paul never took turns being featured on the A-side, it came out rather evenly between them, furthering the appearance of Lennon-McCartney equality. George Martin put whichever song on the A-side he thought would sell most readily. John or Paul sang lead on the songs they were credited with writing. Sometimes based on the best voice for a particular song. Normally John sang lead for one side of the single and Paul or William sang lead for the other side after the single featuring Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever, in which both sides were presented as A-songs. John was given the A-side with All You Need Is Love. The B-side was a mix of them both in Baby, You're a Rich Man. In William's mind, it made him look inferior to John to share the B-side with him, while John occupied the single's A-side. Furthermore, in this case, John had written his part of the shared song first. William wrote his part specifically to go with John's. When William considered what he had allowed to happen, he was troubled, feeling more like a helper than a superior after the All You Need Is Love single. William sang lead on a dozen more singles, but never allowed another one of his songs to be in the second position to one of John's or anyone else's other than Paul's. Whenever William did not have the best song, deserving the A-side, he put one of George's songs on the single in his place. He made George's Something and John's Come Together double A-sides. George's Old Brown Shoe was the B-side of John's The Ballad of John and Yoko. The only other time William took the B spot was for Helter Skelter, topped by Paul on the A-side with his old recording, Got to Get You Into My Life, making Paul appear to dominate both sides. The next single also combined a new song with an old one, having Williams back in the USSR on the A-side with John's old Twist and Shout cover on the back. Page 266. Note, with control held by the super elite over the largest radio stations, they decided which songs would make the top 20 list and how each would rank. That ranking directly impacted record sales. They did not make Penny Lane a #1 hit in the UK for the reasons that Williams explains, but also to show him that he would be more successful without the unacceptable levels of assistance that he received with that song. In his later hits with less assistance, the elite directed the stations to spin his records enough to make them #1 hits for each prescribed duration. No hit of the top 20 was organically ranked by the will of the people. Those who controlled public attitudes dictated the top songs. Even when listeners called in to request songs, no major station was permitted to allow those requests to override the predetermined ranking of the top 20. Protocols also determined what songs could be requested. Now that William is concluding his Paul service, extra media coverage is turning the youth's attention to him by having other artists honor him. To further transmit that illuminated face to the next generation, they are helping him complete his life on a high note. Currently, with personalized music stations, the public has more control over what they hear. With logarithms based on individual preference, the general public can now make their own top 20.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.